Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Camera Peeps, and please welcome Andre.
Good to be back, David.
No problem. Listen, we are today going to talk about battery power in the field, probably from about the last 35 years up until now, and how we've dealt with it all, because it's always been an issue and sometimes a problem, and it still is.
Yeah, well, I remember as being a camera assistant, 20 minutes was pretty good to get a recording going, and then you had to change batteries. So,
and the batteries were?
BP90s.
Okay,
the first ones I recall using.
Okay, so we just happen to have one here. So this is a Sony BP90.
Yep, and we used to
NiCads?
Yes.
Okay.
NiCad batteries.
Yep.
And my first use of them was to put them in one of these, which was the BVU 110 when I started doing it.
Should we pop that in?
Yeah, we'll get one of the other ones.
One of the ones with
yep.
the... Okay.
That one's been decommissioned.
Yeah.
So this is a Premier, which is like a...
I should just point out that Premier Batteries are a Sydney-based company, and what happened, we started out with the Sony batteries that came with the camera, and then I think when they started buying large batches, I guess there was a deal being done with Premier Batteries, basically aftermarket batteries.
Yeah. So the old BP90 used to go in there. The power supply, there's the 4-pin DC power plug, which we all know is that.
Yes.
XLR, but we used to put those in there, and we'd shut the little lever. It was always a bit of a challenge to get that down.
Well, an idiosyncrasy there were a few idiosyncrasies of those batteries, but they often did break where the cable met the... Yeah, okay.
So basically that would last if it was just running the recorder, because we also had the battery belt, which we'll get to.
Yes.
If that was running the recorder, I think you get comfortably about 35 minutes from memory, somewhere there, and the camera dropped down to maybe 15.
Well, Sony came up. Oh, these were an accessory that came with the camera. So you would put a battery in there, close that up, and slide that onto the back of the camera, and then plug that into the camera that's behind you.
Which is this one.
Yeah, so that was designed for that camera.
And this recorder would go to that camera through an umbilical cable, which we do have.
And I used to favour this system because I could pull the camera out, switch it on, and have it warming up before we actually connected the recorder. So I did use this system, which sort of worked reasonably well. It added a bit of weight to the camera, but it wouldn't go flat. It was unlikely to go flat in the middle of a press conference.
But with the battery belts were the next option to keep this stuff running, which we do have one here. Sorry, I didn't... So here's a standard battery belt. This one's actually been decelled, as you would call it. But that would go around, and we could actually probably...
Well, there is a story to this one. That's in the shop there. There were some companies making battery belts, and there was one of the sound recordists on A Current Affair in Melbourne, Sam Humphries. He had the skills with leathercraft, and he actually made his own version, which is pretty much that one. And then we decided that they would be good for all of the crews.
And you would get the XLR plug, which is here.
Yes.
And that again could go into any 12 volt, either on the camera or on the recorder. Now I used to use it on the recorder because it meant that the cameraman didn't have to have that extra weight with that extra BP90 on the back. But if you had this going, the internal battery on the recorder and on the back of the camera, you could get a fair bit of time out of it. So that just helped.
But also, when I started, the camera guys were using Colortran Mini Pros, and they were 30 volt lamps.
Yes.
And then we switched. Things started shrinking. These became available as portable lights, and these were 12 volt bulb. So that was a common thing, of course, in the news game.
That light, I remember often you'd be out at a press conference, and I had the battery belt on as well as the recorder on the other side, and I'd be helping the cameraman by holding that up. And we would get about, I think it's about 15 minutes of light out of that battery belt.
Well, actually, I looked after myself. I used to get a red carpet. I used to be able to get about 40 minutes out of that one.
Pretty
that was just running.
No, I never got more than 20 minutes.
Pretty good.
That was the best run I got.
Well, here's a picture from the day. So this is probably early to mid 90s. At the Arbitration Commission here in Melbourne, and you can see someone's running one of these lathes, And then the one in the background, that's the Colortran Mini Pro. That was the 250 watt, 30 volt battery. But there's a bit of history there as well. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, BP90s.
Well, David, the BP90 was the first one that I had a lot to do with, but then they moved to the NP1, which was commonly used in this generation of Betacam camera, which you'd be able to relate to.
Well, we didn't have these at Channel 9, and I remember watching, I was envious of watching the other camera guys that had camcorders, because we had a split system, but then they weigh a ton. And they really went through a lot of battery power.
Well, that was the thing with these batteries. They all weighed a lot.
Yeah.
The NP1s didn't seem to hold a charge for very long, from what I recall, and they would go into the back of the camera.
Yep.
And depending on what attachments you had for the camera, this was... well,
you can see in this shot here, this cameraman's actually got a single channel radio mic on the back of his Betacam and an MP1.
Yeah, well, this is just a single... use NP1 holder here.
Yep.
So
that's not a Sony accessory?
No, it's a Panasonic.
Okay, right.
But they're a uniform design, so that went on the back of the Panasonic. They used, obviously they had their battery, but that's a single.
Yep.
But Sony, was quite commonly used these, which took two of them.
Yes.
So you could get the two cells in there.
Yep.
If I get up the right way. So you could get two in there, one there and one there.
And therefore,
it went for quite a while.
Therefore, that would give you 10 minutes instead of 5 minutes.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So you had the standard 4-pin, so that could run the VTR, so you could put that on the side of the VTR, or you could put it on the back of the camera. But I mean, as a cameraman, you'd know that'd make it pretty heavy after a while.
Well, I never used those.
Half a brick.
Yeah, I just remember noticing the ABC guys had these, and they were forever changing batteries, and they used to just line the pockets of their pants with spare MP1 batteries. And I think there was a piggyback for that one as well, that particular camera as well.
You could sort of, as you know, it's a combination of things.
Yeah.
So, but the charger, this is the charger I had for mine.
Yep.
And this has got a mixture of Sanyo and Sony batteries in it, but you could do 4 and it sort of was a real overnight sort of thing. You just put them in and it would just charge one after the other. So you just knew by these indicator lamps who was charging. So this one currently is under charge.
Yeah.
And when they were ready, they generally just stayed on steady.
Yeah, okay.
So that was sort of a handy way. There was also other chargers available, single chargers, but this was the most commonly used one.
Yeah.
So NP1, served us for many years. Now the other thing the NP1 went into was these field monitors.
Oh, yeah.
And you would get, I used to only get about half an hour out of it. The batteries would be flat, but you could fit the two in the back, like so. And that would run that monitor for a little while.
Well, I actually used to use the that battery belt that we had up earlier. I used to use that to run that
how
that
long
monitor.
did you get out of that?
I can't remember, but it was most. I think it was most of the day, if not all of it. So.
Yeah, well, which is pretty handy actually, but you've got to have the field monitor. Other things that would happen is, depending on the camera, if you had an older style one with the umbilical cord to the recorder, you could do that, and of course you could get the power in via the BP90 through the 4-pin or this as such. So it really just depended on what was available at the time. So that was the NP1, which went for how many years do you reckon we got out of those? 20 years?
I can't remember. I didn't favour them, to be honest. I just sort of bypassed those.
Well, just as a point of interest, I had the smaller version, the NP11, and that was for
I haven't seen one of those before.
Super Beta.
Okay.
Which was sort of like the competitor to Super VHS, so we used to run
so it's
those,
a consumer camera.
Basically, but I mean, that's only 9.6 volts, but it was just interesting to bring up the NP series, so they made a smaller version, I guess you could say.
Okay.
And that was for the Super Beta, which was trying to compete with the Super VHS at the time.
Fair enough. Well, when stepped up from the tube camera to the CCD camera, and I think the MP1 was sort of still the go-to battery.
Yeah, it was the crossover a bit.
Yeah, look, I still wasn't a big fan and didn't imbue me with a lot of confidence, but Sony brought out, had these accessories, which were BP90 holders, so you just unscrew the MP1 holder and put one of these on the back, and it had the electrical contacts on the back, and then you plug the BP90 in there, and that obviously made the camera heavier, but it was, you got a lot more sort of life out of your recording time. So that was that, and also I extended the life of those BP90s for quite a while, because when I changed to digital Betacam, the batteries.
So you're using them as far as the digital Betacam?
I did, yeah, because the Sony the lithium-ion batteries, they're about $1,000 each.
That's the Velox you're talking
the Velox, when the Velox
yeah.
came out, and
yeah.
I just we'll come to those soon, but I just didn't want to spend $7,000 on batteries. No. So another BP90 adapter with the Velox back.
Well, just interjecting there,
yeah.
my first attempt at getting batteries and things was when the SP camera was still going in the 90s,
yeah.
and I couldn't afford to buy the batteries, so I actually made up my own battery packs, which were these here. And I'd made up these cells which were 12 volts,
yep.
and had just the 4-pin XLR, and that'd go into the back of the camera.
Yep.
Now I got 2 hours out of that,
yeah.
which is pretty good. The only problem is, of course, you had to carry it around,
yeah.
but bit of a nuisance if you're on the go, and swing around and unbalance you a bit, but it worked.
Yeah, I just think having the umbilical cord and the BVU recorder, you just didn't want anything else.
No, so that was sort of, that's right. So what I used to do is I'd charge them, it'd take about 10 hours with this charger that I'd made up to actually charge these lead acid batteries, so they weren't NiCads, they were lead acid.
Okay.
So that sort of worked, and I had 3 sets of these, so that meant 6 hours you could get out of it. So it's just an interesting thing to throw in there because of the cost of the batteries at the time.